Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
How fulfilling the short-term egos, I'll tell you.
In the past, Labour conference was really rather shouty. That's because policy was generated and decided there.
For cuts in public expenditure on which the government's already decided.
It meant the parliamentary party's view, even that of ministers, was sometimes shouted down and even rejected.
This has been the widest consultation exercise.
By the time Tony Blair became leader in 1994, policy-making had changed. Instead, the National Policy Forum was set up. The idea to widen the debate beyond the party conference. But now conference could be about to make a comeback, amongst other changes to policy making.
We're going to do open forums on many things. John Trickett is starting with a constitutional convention which will go around the country taking views, yes on the power of the House of Lords, yes on devolution, yes on voting systems, yes on voting age, all those key issues, and on power of local government, all those kind of things. That will then feed into what local parties want to put forward, what union branches and unions want to put forward through the traditional structure of the party. Eventually, conference will obviously have to make decisions.
Now, the way policy is made in the Labour Party is, and has always been, complicated, so bear with me. Currently, the main body for shaping policy is the National Policy Forum, an elected group of over 200 people, including members, elected representatives and trade unions. It puts policy to conference and needs a majority of not less than 2/3 to get approved. But the conference vote, up until now at least, is used as a guide. The final say on which items make it into the manifesto is made at a meeting of Labour's ruling National Executive Committee, the Shadow Cabinet and key figures from both the Parliamentary Party and the National Policy Forum. Following this review, Jeremy Corbyn's team say all these processes could be changed or chopped, even the National Policy Forum. There's likely to be a special focus on whether using online ballots for all members to decide positions on certain big issues could work. But those on the right of the party are worried this is about more than opening up politics.
He wants to change the Labour Party and change it permanently. And the group of people who surround him as professional advisors and professional politicians never thought they'd get the chance to run the Labour Party, and they're not going to leave it without having changed it utterly, and that means changing the personnel, it means changing the policies.
He won't present it as I am imposing my views as leader. He will be wanting it to look like this is stuff that's coming from ordinary Labour Party members, and he's just reflecting a grassroots upsurge in demand for more left-wing policies.
Jeremy Corbyn is practising with autocue for his conference speech on Tuesday to make sure he doesn't leave anything out. Now, of course, there are some things his shadow cabinet and MPs hopes he does forget. But these are the issues he was elected on, overwhelmingly by Labour members, and 50,000 more of them have signed up since he became leader. This review will be open to all of them, even those who paid just £3.
MPs will be changed by that process. They'll have to start being accountable to their local constituencies and local people. The Parliamentary Labour Party is completely out of kilter, both with public opinion, but particularly with Labour Party members.
The first big test of policy tension will come with the issue of scrapping Trident. A vote is expected tomorrow. Jeremy Corbyn has already said if passed by conference, it would become policy.
The desire to push contentious issues as emergency resolutions onto the floor of conference next week looks as though the people around Jeremy Corbyn want to work with speed, and we're about to see an all-out war declared on the PLP.
Don't mistake democracy for division. That isn't what this is about. This is about making sure we have an open, democratic debate.
But you know that you're going to have a number on your PLP who are going to fall out about Trident.
Well, that's fair enough. And they will honestly do so as well, and their views will have to be respected.
None of the new members who joined up because of Jeremy Corbyn will have a vote at this conference. Current rules state they haven't been around long enough. Labour sources say this review into policy making will take months and haven't said when changes will eventually be made. But this time next year, the authority of conference and those within it may be very different.
And with me now from Brighton, Chris Leslie, who until 3 weeks ago was Shadow Chancellor. Mr. Leslie, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you, Andrew?
I'm fine, thank you, and it looks beautiful where you are. Apropos Jeremy Corbyn becoming Labour leader, you said that you're still expecting, quote, to wake up and Bobby Ewing will step out of the shower. Is Mr. Corbyn's election a dream or a nightmare for your party?
Well, it's certainly very different. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Some people will call it incredible, some people will call it amazing. I was just thinking back actually to where we were a year ago. We had our last conference in Manchester, and I don't think anybody would have predicted or necessarily wanted to be in the place that we are today. I certainly at that time was hoping to be preparing to go into government, to be in a Labour treasury doing the right thing for the majority of the public. I didn't predict this, nobody did, and so for a lot of people we're certainly adjusting to this new era.
Why did you refuse to serve in Mr. Corbyn's shadow cabinet?
Well, I wasn't asked to serve in it, but I made it pretty clear over the summer that I disagreed with Jeremy Corbyn's economic policies on a number of different areas: printing money, nationalising without compensation, some of these things about general taxation and having people be able to opt out if they didn't agree with defence spending. I think it's best for Jeremy to have a shadow chancellor who's on the same wavelength as him, and I think that's, he's got a mandate. I think that's the fair thing to do. We're all Labour MPs, but he needs to make sure he's got a shadow chancellor who I think agrees with his basic economic approach, and that's what he's done.
Well, the new shadow chancellor is John McDonnell. He says he wants to eliminate the budget deficit on current spending, but still borrow to invest. Well, that was Labour's policy that you fought on the last election, so surely you could sit in a shadow cabinet that believed in that.
Well, I think there's a little bit of confusion here, and I'm hoping John McDonnell will clear this up in his speech tomorrow, because of course the big vote in the House of Commons is on the 14th of October on George Osborne's proposed surplus law. Now, of course, that does not allow borrowing for investment. I think John McDonnell called it balmy last week, but apparently he's indicating he's going to vote for it on the 14th of October. So what we need to now know is quite how those figures add up. I'm sure he's going to go through the detail of that in his speech tomorrow. But for myself, I don't think we should ever turn our heads against the idea of a surplus, even an overall surplus. But I was always very keen to get reassurances from George Osborne about the viability of public services, about protecting the most vulnerable in society. I actually would have preferred to have that sort of pressure on George Osborne to get some of those concessions. But John McDonnell's saying that he's intending to vote for that next week. So let's see how the sums add up.
Would John McDonnell make a good Chancellor of the Exchequer?
I think that's for the public to decide. I think the election is now, 4.5 years away. Let's see if they can convince the general public and get elected. We all want, of course, to get that Labour government, but ultimately we're a long, long way away from that.
As a member of the public, a well-informed member of the public, what's your view?
I think that I've got issues I don't agree with John McDonnell on. In fact, I would make a plea to John McDonnell and to the rest of the front bench, the new front bench Treasury team. There are certain things we've got to do in order to persuade the public that we can be elected again. I think we've got to tone down some of the aggressive rhetoric, for example, about sequestering assets without compensation. I don't think, threats of capital controls and, boycotting business events, even at Labour Party conferences, are the right way to go. We need to be constructive, we need to be inclusive. That's the new politics that Jeremy Corbyn is talking about, and I think we need to give John McDonnell and the new leader the chance now to set out their stall. Let's hear the detail of the policy, because I think we're all aiming for the same things. We want social justice, we want economic efficiency, we want international peace, but it's how you achieve that matters.
Does the scale of Mr. Corbyn's victory entitle him to lead Labour into the next general election?
Just a second, hold on a second. Could you just repeat that?
Yes, I'm sorry you've got some trouble with earpiece there. Does the scale of Mr. Corbyn's victory, does it entitle him to lead Labour into the next general election?
Well, certainly he's won a mandate amongst the membership. I think we've got to now let him set out his stall. I think that is absolutely what he has to do. But it's not going to be me or even
but
the
is
Labour
he
Party
entitled to
membership.
lead Labour into the next election,
Yes,
given the
of course.
scale of his victory?
That has been the decision of the
Okay.
Labour Party in the leadership contest. But I think what matters most is that we start to face out to the public. I think Jeremy's got a good point about wanting more debate. I think that's really important. The one debate that I don't think we have concluded, though, is why we lost that general election in May. And I think if we end up as a party just looking internally on some of our favourite issues without thinking about what the wider public are saying about the economy, about what sort of society we want, I think we will not be doing the wider country a service. Labour is here through Parliament to make sure that we're an alternative, credible government. That's what everybody in the Labour Party should want to achieve, and that's what I'll continue to campaign for.
Do you want Mr Corbyn to become Prime Minister in 2020?
Look, I want a Labour government. Of course I want a Labour Prime Minister, but what I think we've got to do most of all is convince the public. It's not going to be my decision. The public are going to be looking at the choices. We're not even going to have David Cameron, of course, at the next general election. We don't know who are going to be the main contenders for Prime Minister. Lots of parliamentary candidates and so forth are all going to be up for grabs and changed, apparently. So we'll see how that comes. We've got a long process, but I certainly, of course, always want to campaign for a Labour government and a Labour Prime Minister.
Of course.
But it's up to the public.
I didn't ask you of that because I asked you if you wanted Mr Corbyn to be the Prime Minister in 2020. What would you say to Tom Harris, former Labour MP for Glasgow South? He said, quote, "We can't have a leader like Jeremy Corbyn and not expect to be wiped out."
Well, I mean, I didn't back Jeremy for the Labour leadership. I supported Yvette Cooper. I think there were lots of people in the Labour Party who wanted different candidates. I didn't win out amongst the majority of members with that. So I've obviously got my scepticisms. I think a lot of people do too. But, I think it's only fair to give Jeremy the space and John McDonnell the time to set out those policies now. That's what we want to hear from. I mean, I come on your programme quite frequently. We still don't really get the Chancellor and the Prime Minister on your programme. But I think Jeremy and John McDonnell need to come on and answer some of these questions about how the sums add up that I've been doing for many years. It's their turn now to set out their stall, and I'm relishing the chance to hear what they've got to say.
What do you think of Peter Mandelson's view that if and when the polls show Mr Corbyn has no chance of winning in 2020, if they do, in his view, then the Parliamentary Labour Party should act to remove him?
Well, look, I don't think there is a time now to be talking about those sort of changes. We've just had this leadership election, for goodness sake, only 2 weeks ago, and we've got to give it a chance. I think that is the natural thing most people want to do. I have my worries and anxieties about the policy platform that would be best placed to convince the public of that. You know that. I think we've got to be honest and straight talking about these things. I think we've got to, yes, have exciting policies that people get very idealistic about, but at the same time, the public want reassurance. They want people to care about security. They want responsible government, I think, in particular when it comes to fiscal policy and the wider economy.
Okay.
I think that was one of the reasons we didn't convince the public in May, and we've got to focus on that.
Michael Duggar, leading Shadow Cabinet member, says Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party could start purging mainstream MPs. Is he right to be worried? Are you worried about that?
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, you're now talking to somebody outside the loop of the leadership. I don't know quite what the agenda will be when it comes to rule changes in the National Executive.
Could you face a challenge in your constituency?
I doubt it, actually, because I had a very, very constructive local party meeting on Friday night. We had good discussion about the refugee crisis and migration. I think a lot of people have joined the party because they want to get involved in real political discussion. Of course there will be some who have differences of opinion on personalities. Jeremy says, and we have to, I think, believe him on this, that he doesn't want to get into the sort of personality changes and the personality politics. And I think that would be the right course to do. Getting into this whole arrangement of fighting over parliamentary selections is just going to be destructive and won't do anything to convince the public that we are a serious alternative government.
When you look at the scale of Mr Corbyn's victory and you look at what Mr Corbyn stands for and what a lot of those who voted for him stand for, is there not a danger that the Parliamentary Labour Party, the party that you're in, is now out of touch and does not represent the membership of the Labour Party?
Well, of course, there are lots of different tensions in these things. Of course, as members of Parliament, we have to go back to our local Labour parties, talk to our members, hear from them their views. But we're also elected to represent a far greater number of people in our constituencies. I mean, I was elected on a manifesto in May that talked about being careful about the deficit, making sure that we did the right thing, responsible things on fiscal policy, that we supported those tenets of national security, NATO, making sure that we had those strong defences. Now, I've also got to have an eye to the mandate from the wider public as well. But we have the debate and the discussion, but I think most members of Parliament know that that is also something they can't ignore.
Just one final very quick question to you. Will you join in the singing of the red flag at the end of conference, or will you just stand in respectful silence?
Oh, what a good question. I quite like singing all the time. I'm in the spirit of cooperation. Of course, I'll join in and sing.
All right.
You know, just don't make me do it right now. If
no, we won't make you do it right now. But we have, since you're obviously a huge Dallas fan, we've got a little present for you. Our Adam, I think, is there. Is going to give it to you. There you go.
Dallas
wow.
Series 9.
Very good.
This
Look
is the
at
one
that.
where Bobby Ewing comes out of the shower. So.
There you go.
Well, do I have to declare this in the Register of Members' Interests?
Well, you have now. It's seen. The whole world has seen it. I don't care. It'll keep you amused in a cold winter's night. Chris Leslie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Sunny Brighton there. You're not at conference. You want to be a fly on the wall. Don't panic. Our intrepid reporter, our Adam there, he's also there.
Roll up, roll up. Welcome to Labour Party conference here in Brighton. It looks a bit quiet at the moment, but there's actually quite a buzz here because 50,000 new members have signed up since Jeremy Corbyn became leader. Sadly, his former rival Yvette Cooper ran away from us, and his deputy Tom Watson had to go to a meeting. Oh look, what's this? It's a pile of Jeremy Corbyn's favourite newspaper, the far left Morning Star, although the front page is about that British guy being freed from Guantanamo Bay. We'll have to wait till Monday for the special conference edition. Thank you very much. One magazine has even printed a Corbyn special supplement.
This is Corbyn the Phoenix, coming from the ashes of New Labour.
So that's Tony Blair's like mangled, burning corpse there. That.
It's a symbol of, you know what cartoonists are like. You give them an idea,
quite harsh,
they can be harsh.
Their anger at what is happening in this country by what the Tory government is doing.
The man himself was addressing an event for Labour women.
By standing up on fracking.
So Jeremy Corbyn's done his first speech of this party conference. He got a couple of standing ovations. Sounds like he's got big plans for shaking up the party, although he didn't use an autocue, which he said he's been practicing ahead of his leader's speech on Tuesday. Do you think that was the speech of somebody who's ready to stand up in front of the nation on Tuesday?
I mean, yes. He doesn't seem at all nervous. It's not like he's got any side on him. He's honest talking, as it says clearly in front of him on the little thing. I think whether the nation will hear what he's saying through all the fug, I think he's ready to stand up and talk to them.
And this is the conference hall, a place that Jeremy Corbyn says he wants to be more important in the Labour policy-making process. What delegates will be doing today is doing something called the priorities ballot, where they vote on what motions they want discussed on the floor here. And there's one about Trident. Controversial.
At the Labour's first NEC meeting under Jeremy Corbyn on Tuesday, he answered questions for an hour and a half. Now, I was on the NEC under Kinnock, under Blair, under Miliband. It was never anything like that. Really open, a very friendly meeting.
Now, Jeremy doesn't drink. Does that mean that the parties will be less fun?
Well, no, that's just one personal weakness of his I don't share.
So we'll still be partying as usual?
Yes.
Okay, good. And what is Jezza's idea of fun? How about a pre-conference visit where you pose with a funny-looking marrow?
And with me now from Brighton, the former Deputy Prime Minister, Labour's John Prescott. John Prescott, welcome back on the Sunday Politics.
Thank you. I haven't got an allotment, by the way, if you start on that.
OK, well, I'm glad you clarified that because the nation was concerned. What do you make of your old mate, Peter Mandelson's written remark that in replacing Ed Miliband with Jeremy Corbyn, your party has, quote, swapped one loser for an even worse one?
Well, Peter Mandelson always gets involved I don't think he's listened to in the party. No doubt he'll be in the big debate, because we have more of a debate under Jeremy likely than we had under Peter Mandelson's time.
Do you share his expectation, Mr. Mandelson's expectation, that it's only a matter of time before the Labour membership realises Mr. Corbyn is unelectable as Prime Minister?
Only Peter Mandelson can say that when we've just had the biggest vote in the party, a massive vote for Jeremy, both in the constituency members and the affiliated and supporters, and they were the things that he supported to extend and reach out, and it's just elected a man with a bigger vote than Tony Blair.
Were Tristram Hunt, Chuka Umunna, Yvette Cooper and other prominent Labour figures, Chris Leslie being one of them that we've just interviewed, were they right to refuse to serve in Mr. Corbyn's shadow cabinet?
Well, I think that's their right, of course, but then don't complain if the cabinet's not of your own making. I mean, we've just seen that with Harriet, who about 5 or 6 of their leading women refused to stand and then complained about the makeup of the cabinet. Look, that's just not on. It's each individual's right to do that, but don't criticise a cabinet when it's made up from 45% of the women members in the PLP and more women than men in his cabinet. So why the hell are you moaning?
Should the conference, should that be the supreme policy-making body of the Labour Party?
I've never been satisfied that it was, and each leader brings its change, doesn't it? Neil Kinnock did back in the 80s, and others have come in and made changes. Miliband made some changes which brought in the £3 membership. I was against that, quite frankly, at the time. But basically, they do make changes, and policy is the crucial issue. And what Jeremy's now talking about is not personalities that have tended to dominate the Labour Party. It's talking about policy issues. I mean, would you ever thought that Trident might have got on to the debate at this conference within a fortnight of him being elected?
Right, well, you raised Trident, and it's probably going to be debated this week, as you say. So I come back to my question. If conference votes to abolish Trident, should that become Labour policy? Should the conference be supreme?
Well, I think it's quite a fundamental question at the moment. For example, we have a manifesto which Chris talked about, but well, perhaps we'd say I picked it up quickly then, that the manifesto, as you spoke of Chris, he actually said, I fought that manifesto. We were defeated in the biggest defeat we've ever had on that manifesto. So we can assume it's not running at the moment, but there is a difficulty. We've had a deputy leadership, we've moved immediately into the election of leader, and each candidate will say what they stand for. I didn't vote for Jeremy, I voted for Andy, but basically Jeremy put his case, overwhelmingly supported, and so you have a difficulty now where our front bench people have to go into Parliament and talk about whether it's the welfare, whether it's the defence, quite different to what Jeremy's proposed. So we have a timetable programme here. I think what they should do with the Trident one, if the Conference Arrange Committee agrees that it will be one of the motions to be debated here, once they've done that, given the old structure we've got, I would send that basically to the Policy Exchange, ask them to producing a report, and actually then send it round the constituency parties like we did with the changing in the Constitution of Clause 4. Do that, then you really will have party discussion. And if you leave it simply as it is at the moment, it'll look as if a leader came in, changed the policy, and you asked to endorse it within a fortnight. You'll not convince people that's the way to run politics. We've had decades of that, and it's really well failed. Can we try the change?
Mr. Corbyn wants to apologise on behalf of the Labour Party for the Iraq war. Should he apologise?
Well, in my view, when he made this statement, he can apologise for himself as Jeremy, but he's now the leader of the party. So in that sense, he has to make a judgment and speak as the leader.
But he's got nothing to apologise for. He was against the Iraq war.
Yeah, that's quite right, but he's speaking for the party, not Jeremy.
Yeah,
I would say that if you speak up there, you're just a backbencher, now you're the leader. So you have to take into account. And we're waiting for the Chilcot report that'll put more details into this. But if Jeremy feels, as he said in the election, I want to make clear the Labour Party was wrong. Nobody was saying it was right, the Labour government over Iraq, including myself, who was involved in those decisions.
So should he apologise? On behalf of the party, should he apologise?
Well, Well, let's see what the words are. But if he says, look, the Labour Party got it wrong and I apologise for it, the Labour government got it wrong, not the party, the Labour government got it wrong and I'm apologising now as the leader. I think he can say that. It sounds a mature approach to a debate, and it's different, isn't it? Instead of trying to kid you guys in the media as to what we're doing and try to be evasive about replies, if you listen to the interview with him, it was a brilliant interview in the Marn programme today. After Marn had been complaining he wasn't on the week before. Well, he got his answers today. And I've been here at this party 60 years now, and I've been at this conference, many of them. I've never heard a leader speak so frankly, so directly, and you look at him and think, well, he believes that, and what the vote showed, they trust him. Now we have to see what's going to happen in the next couple of years.
Well, John McDonnell, the new Shadow Chancellor, he's called for Tony Blair to be put on trial for war crimes at The Hague over Iraq. Should he be tried for war crimes?
I think you've been trolling through all the quotes. We're going to hear more and more of that. That's when they made it, had no responsibility to anybody. They expressed an individual view, didn't necessarily vote for the government on it. So you go to those quotes. What I want to know is, what is he now saying about the economy? What is he saying what we're doing about getting people back to work, into housing? And we'll have a speech here. Now, when I heard Chris talking here, he said, I couldn't agree with the economic policy. It's only going to be announced tomorrow from what McDonnell wants to represent as the Chancellor's economic policy, different to the government. Chris here says he couldn't agree with it. He said that before he was even elected.
Well, let's take Mr. McDonnell's economic policy. He's already told the papers that he's in favour of balancing the current budget, not having a deficit there, but still borrowing to invest. In what way is that different from the policy you stood at the election on?
Well, let's say it was our policy in the manifesto, if you go back to the point.
That is the manifesto policy.
Well, for infrastructure investment, but not, he wanted to balance and get rid of the deficit. He said that, but you can do that in different ways, can't you? And you've got to discuss what those ways are. You can either increase the tax, and you're already asking that question. You can increase it by growth. Can we get enough of that? Or you can have a priority of what public expenditure is. To be quite honest, I mean, if you're looking at 100 million for Trident, when it is a new system, I'm not in favour of that. I wasn't in Labour cabinet under Blair. But what I'd sooner where the money goes, into the National Health Service. Now, if you're going to have a National Health Service that extends to social care, it's going to cost billions. You've got to make a priority in public expenditure. And that's what the debates will be about. There was never any debate before about that. Debate was not on about issues that come from seminars that they used to hold here at the conference.
If you were trying to unite the Labour Party, and it is at the moment, the polls tell us it seems divided, but that may be because you're having a debate, but if you were trying to unite it, would you have appointed Mr. McDonnell as a Shadow Chancellor?
Well, I wouldn't have done, no. But let's see what Mr. McDonnell did. You've already given some quotes from him, and we'll hear a lot more of when he was in his free days.
Why would you not have appointed him?
Well, I never voted for Jeremy. I voted for Andy. And I can make choices. That's what democracy is about. You have your debate, you have your discussions.
But what is it about Mr. McDonnell that you wouldn't want him as Shadow Chancellor?
But wait a minute. On this party thing, it is the members. It started with the one member, one vote I was involved in, and now it involves the membership on a greater scale. One MP's vote's the same as one member, and at the end of the day, you'll have to convince the party. So let's hear what John's going to say. I've read some of the things. He wouldn't have said them a few years ago. He's now having to deal in the leadership and produce a policy that gets the trust of the people. When I hear Chris Leslie here talking about the electorate, you know, they rejected that policy that he's talking about. You better have one that deals with the real issues and finds the money.
So you think that Mr. Corbyn and Mr. McDonnell said a lot of things as backbenchers because they had no real power or responsibility, and that they have to be more careful in what they say now? Is that your message?
Well, in fact, that's what I'm saying, but Jeremy Corbyn almost said the same thing today when they asked him about quotes. He went on to justify it. I think he's even apologised for one, as indeed McDonnell has. So they must have got it wrong. What do you mean? Not that their judgments have changed, that could be an argument, but now as leaders they have to speak to a wider audience. That's what Chris was asking for before. And you start, first of all, by saying some of the things you said in the past were not right now as leaders of a Labour Party.
Right, final bit of advice for your new leader. When you became a Privy Councillor, did you go down on bended knee and kiss the Queen's hand? Would you advise Mr. Corbyn to do that?
Have any journalists been to it that talk about it? That becomes the main issue. You seem to have left the tie out, you've moved from the tie, then it was whether you're the national anthem you're going to sing it. By the way,
we're not members of the Privy Council, that's why I'm asking you. You were.
No, hang on. You're asking me a question on assumption that answers. I can answer that, but every person's on about kneeling. You don't do that. When I was first asked to join the Privy Council by John Major, I said I didn't want to do it. He said, why? Because you have to kneel and kiss her hand. I didn't want to do that. I thought it was a stupid arrangement. I still think it should go. But you don't do that. You hop. Get into hopping. You hop from one chair to another and brush your lips lightly across her hand. But don't forget this. They told me when I said no, you won't get the same information that Blair's get, because they only give information from the Queen's Council on that. That's quite wrong. You can't refuse a member who's elected simply because of some royal prerogative.
So instead of bending before the Queen, you hopped. I just want to get this right, since, as you've said, we're not there.
I don't know why those two chairs. When I said no and they told me I couldn't have the information that Blair gets, I wasn't very happy about that. So I went up and I looked, and they had two chairs. And for one reason or other, you go from one chair to the other. Now, I think that's ridiculous. I don't think it's democratic. I think we should bloody well get rid of it. It's no offence to the Queen, because a lot of people have a lot of respect for the Queen. But all that monarchy nonsense established by the establishment themselves, scrap it.
Very well, thank you for that. Just very finally, briefly.
By the way, I did resign from it.
No, I understand that. I said that you used to be a member. We've done our research, as you would only expect, John Prescott.
Well done.
Just finally, if Jezza was to offer a job to Preza, would you accept?
No, I like circulating on the outside. And I'm looking forward to the debate.
Very well. John Prescott from a very sunny Brighton, thanks for joining us on the Sunday Politics.
Thank you.